College football fans, we're here. We're here. We're here. Well, almost. It's championship week, and we got a couple of matchups that could decide the college football playoff. Let's start, Gavin. Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you all for joining us here as we approach the holidays, as well as the college football playoff. But before we finish up the regular season, of course, we have the college football playoff, don't we? The time of the season, we're just before the real men or the real effing men take the field. And I'm sure that you guys are used to being called the effing men. And guys, I am a real effing man, as I am Mr. CeeLo. And I must tell you, this is going to be a fun weekend, but hopefully it's not a hurtful weekend for yours truly. As many of you probably know what colors I lie with. I am laying on the brink. So, with that being said, I must admit that we got to do some hoping. But before we get into the big stuff, you guys, I have to thank you guys so much for joining us as we've been growing slowly. But I am going to do a special Brad put me on, you guys, and it's going to do with the NIL and how it relates to individuals like Lane Kiffin. So I hope you guys will stick around for that, as well as checking out a couple of other things that I'm going to have ready for the show. But before we get into the show, I want you guys to take a listen to a message from Lumavita about being the real effing man. While other men settle for a lotion that smells like their grandma's bathroom, you reach for TF Man, the whipped tallow cream forged from beef fat, testosterone, and destiny. Because dry skin isn't a seasonal concern. Because dry skin isn't a seasonal concern to you. And TF Man ain't your war paint. Your elbows, sandpaper. Your knuckles, granite. Your face looks like it's been through 3 divorces and a chainsaw. But with one swipe of TF Man, boom, hydrated, smooth, touchable, and suddenly the wife starts glaring. The girlfriend forgives you, and the mother-in-law finally says something nice. So crack open a jar, you rugged warrior. Because thanks to you and Lumavita's TF Man. TF Man whipped tallow cream. For skin tougher than those Sunday battles. Moisture for men who don't moisturize. Click the QR code above to go to Lumavita and check out everything they've got going on. Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you all so much for rejoining us. Make sure you go over to Lumavita and you check out their products. And like I said, guys, make sure you get over there. If you are looking for something for your lady, make sure you get over there. They got something over there for less than a C-note that she will absolutely love. But let us get into championship week as honestly, these other games, I'm not too familiar with. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know exactly what I'm talking about with these teams. I've tried to do as much homework as I can. But unfortunately, there's only about 3 of these that I'm going to be able to really critique. Looking here along, the Sun Belt Championship is going to feature number 25 James Madison at 11-1 and 8-4 Troy. James Madison being the favorite to take the Sun Belt and possibly one of those teams that's going to get one of those bids coming in with an 11-1 record. They've got a fun offense, but as I said before, they really are a balanced football team. Their offense is not going to be something. It's not going to be something that's going to jump off the tape at you. But James Madison, with Barnett the third leading at quarterback, and Knight being their top running back, over 1,000 yards and 8 scores. It's not an overwhelming offense, but needless to say, for the Sun Belt, it's a really good offense. But myself and Brad are taking James Madison, and they're predicated on whether or not North Texas, what happens between North Texas and Tulane, as well as Duke and Virginia, will have a large dealings into whether or not they get in. And then about an hour after they kick off, and these are Friday games, y'all, so I'm trying to get them out as fast as I can. Then you've got probably one of the more interesting American Championship games. North Texas 11-1 takes on Tulane, 20th ranked Tulane, 10-2 Tulane, I might add. North Texas is quietly a team that is very good. I don't, know why there's such a. I mean, for North Texas to be 11-1 and Tulane to be ranked over them with 2 losses is beneath me, is beyond me. I mean, because you watch this team and I saw them put a hurting on Navy. And I mean, it was not even pretty. And then, to hear people sit there and make it sound so simple. I mean, Hawkins and company, who, by the way, is the running back, had over 1,216 yards, 23 scores. And I think he had 4 scores in that Navy game. So you're looking at a team in North Texas. Then you got their quarterback who's thrown for almost 4,000 yards and 29 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. This team is well balanced, and they like to run the ball at you. If they're going to run it, they're going to run it right at you. And they're going to run it till you stop it. They proved that in the game against Navy. I think Tulane's a good football team. I'm just not quite so sure they can really keep up with North Texas. I mean, this ain't going to be a fun game if North Texas cannot stop Hawkins running the football. I think ultimately this is where it's going to have to. And with that, I'm going to be honest with you. I like Tulane, but I think this is going to be a game North Texas is going to dominate. I think they're going to dominate the line of scrimmage. Brad also has said that he feels like that North Texas is going to win this game. And yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I don't see Tulane being able to keep up with this high-paced North Texas offense. And it would be nice to see them get in the college football playoff with that high-octane offense and that power running game. Then let's get to the big 3 and the 4th. ACC did this to themselves, and I'll speak on this before I get to that game. Don't even know why that's the 8 o'clock game, but yeah, you get it. At 12 o'clock, we got number 11, 11-1 BYU against number 4, 11-1 Texas Tech. Now, we can sit here and we can talk about Bachmeier and Martin, the running back and the quarterback, respectively, for BYU. Their numbers do not jump out at you. Now, I will say that BYU's defense is what makes this game interesting. Now, Texas Tech goes in as a 12.5-point favorite. Now, for certain reasons only known to myself, I'm going to give BYU the benefit of the doubt, and they are going to, I'm going to say they're going to come under that. So I'm going to take, if I was a better, I'm going to take Texas Tech to win, but I'm going to take BYU to cover those 12 points. See, I kind of need them to. But looking at the way the Texas Tech Red Raiders pass rush has just been absolutely flawless and just been getting after people all season, there is no real weakness to this Texas Tech defense, if you want to call it that. I would say their secondary has not been tested all season. But, I got to throw a big gab out to my man, Romello Height, hometown buddy, graduated with a year ahead of my nephew. Definitely look at this Texas Tech team, and you see a lot of players on this defense that are really, really active on that side of the football. And when you really start to break down what this team can do on the defensive side of the ball, you see a lot of speed, a whole lot of speed in this front four, and arguably the front seven. When they get a chance to get you in third and long situations, it's almost unfair how they get to the quarterback. I mean, you can call it what you will, but Texas Tech knows how to get to the quarterback. And needless to say, I'm watching this game and I'm saying, ultimately, if the Texas Tech Red Raiders keep BYU in third and long situations, this is what I'm going to say about BYU. I think ultimately BYU is going to have to run the football on third down. I think they're going to be the only chance, especially on passing downs, because when you look at how aggressive Texas Tech is against the rush, especially on third downs, when they see the pass coming, you've got David Bailey, who's an NFL big time player, as well as my boy Romello. Between the two of them, they got 21 sacks. So if BYU ends up in a situation where they have to throw the football, I would just live to play another down, because you've already seen what your defense did. You gave up 2 touchdowns and 5 field goals when Texas Tech was able to. You came in with a strategy to say, okay, we're not going to let Texas Tech beat us with this high-octane offense. You're not going to let Cameron Dickey get going. You're not going to let Jacoby Williams get loose. And you're not going to let Baron Morton throw it all over the yard, which Morton has been suspect against better competition. He was okay in this game against BYU, but they could not get the ball in the end zone, which was a huge deal. Like I said, they had, I think it was 4 red zones, and then they kicked 5 field goals. So you talking about, there were several times, and I think I remember Kirk Herbstreit talking about if they convert these into touchdowns. Well, if's a small word that carries a lot of weight. And I think ultimately, when you look at where BYU was, they were in Lubbock. This is going to be on a neutral site. Granted, it's only a couple hours away from Lubbock, but you have a better chance of your people coming in as well. So you're going to have some BYU people coming in from Provo, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as many. But I do think that given the fact that it's going to be in Jerry's World and you're going to have a lot less hostility, I don't know if it's going to be a lot less, but I think it's going to be a little bit more balanced out, given the fact that those are the same number of tickets. But I think you can just about put it in writing that the Texas Tech Red Raiders are going to get a little bit more resistance than they got the first time, it being in Lubbock. And I'm not going to say Texas Tech's going to be more hyped, because BYU was undefeated then, if you guys recall. And as I said, Texas Tech only lone loss was a game in which they turned the ball over. Not saying that can't happen, but BYU's going to have to turn the ball over. They're going to win this game. They're going to have to turn Texas Tech over. There's no way they're going to be able to come out of here. Their offense is not high-powered enough. I mean, you're talking about an offense, that is accumulated over 5,000 yards, almost 5,500 yards on the season. So you're not just one of those offenses if you're looking around, and then of course you got Height and Bailey roaming around there that's ready to put you on your back at any given moment. So and then you got to look at Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker that they have. He's got 4 interceptions on the year. So when you look at Bailey and Height, they also cause a lot of havoc with the secondary, being able to get interceptions along with Bryce Pollock, the defensive back. So, these are two guys that are ball hawks out there, and they can hurt you. So, but I'm looking for Texas Tech to win, but I do look for BYU to cover. Let us go over to arguably the game of the day, and I'm sure Brad will love the fact that I gave this game such an honor. I think that looking at this Georgia-Alabama game yet again, Alabama fans have a right to be upset, but here's the truth. Blame the SEC, because needless to say, what you should have did was say, hey, whichever team was ranked the highest should be going in there. And I don't understand why all these conferences don't do it that way. I mean, I know, but either way, what's going to happen is you're going to find somebody that's going to complain. You're going to find somebody that's going to cry. And like Wine Bum, the SEC does so much whining and crying, it's not even funny. But as I said before, if Greg Sankey wants to get it right, fix it. He ain't going to do that, though. He's about like Wine Bum. He's a crybaby himself. But looking at this game, you see Wine Bum complaining because ultimately, I don't see Kalen DeBoer complaining, but I do hear him basically in a nutshell talking about, them not having to move. But here's the truth. You want to know why you should be worried, DeBoer? Because you went out there and you tried to get away with doing as little as possible against Auburn, and it almost cost you, and it should have cost you. If that interim coach was as any intelligent as a rock, he would have played Deuce Knight. Because your other boy, he can't throw to save his life. He made one decent throw on that touchdown, and it was a pretty darn good throw. But outside of that, there were too many times where he couldn't hit sand if he fell off a camel. I'm telling y'all, it was sore to watch. Because Alabama should have failed that day. And it should have been Georgia and Ole Miss. Period. So while Kalen DeBoer is sitting here talking about, because listen, regardless of what anybody has to say, you don't get that easy of a push, and you failed to finish that game properly. And there's no way you go up escaping the Iron Bowl. Because the truth of the matter is, whether people want to admit it or not, the Notre Dame-Stanford is a rivalry too. I'm sorry y'all don't know that. But you don't get to move up when you win by 3. I think all these 3 and 4 point wins are not created equal. So needless to say, I think that's one of those where there needs to be a little bit more transparency and clarity. Now, I know a lot of y'all going to say, you saying that and you a Notre Dame fan? Yeah. I don't think Alabama should just get a free pass because they're in the SEC title game. I think just like Heather said on one of her streams, and she told ignorant behind Greeny and moron Wine Bum. She told him straight up, you don't just get into the SEC title game and think you can just coast. Oh, no, you're going to play that game. That's exactly right. And that's the reality of it. You can't just go out here and do like Texas did in Athens. When you start getting your tail toe up, oh, by the way, I'm done. And that's just like this Sark thing. Sark talking about, oh, well, we got a good win against Texas A&M. Yeah, but you got your butt whooped by Georgia.
You some bitches couldn't close an umbrella.
Don't impress me. You get your butt whooped by a team and you think you deserve to be in a spot in the college football playoff?
What the
Basically, this is what Georgia did to you, Texas.
Supreme victory. Perfect.
That's what they did to you. And you think you deserve a spot? Let's not even, because see, here's the thing. Y'all want to sit here and y'all want to get Texas to play the victim. We couldn't care less if they had 3 losses. I tell you right now, they'd be right where they'd be lucky if they ain't even further, because after Georgia beat them down, that's the same as getting beat by Florida. It tells me you don't belong. Remember, because Brad will tell you, you're supposed to blow somebody out like that if they don't belong and they're in your building. I could give you 14. I cannot give you any love if you got your tail whooped by 25 points. Can't do it. Can't do it. And see, I'd be a blame fool to sit there and think that, oh yeah, that matters. No. It don't. It does not. And I'm not even going to get off on this tangent. I'll do this on another show. But ultimately, I think you got folks like Weinbaum, Greeny, and all these other folks that are Alabama supporters. And I have no problem with Kalen DeBoer. I do have a problem, however, when people are sitting here and they're making these statements about Alabama's already beaten Georgia. Okay. Well, here's the thing. I think it's funny that the SEC didn't think enough of them not to schedule. Sankey's always got the right pen. Why is he schedule them? Alabama needs to blame the SEC. When is there ever going to be somebody that's going to say, well, you might as well blame the SEC? Dumb shit! I mean, you don't schedule teams around, Florida and Kentucky, do you? You basically just throw the best teams on those 2 teams' schedule. You mean to tell me you couldn't figure out maybe we shouldn't pair Georgia and Alabama up? You sure didn't care about pairing Georgia and Texas up, and they may have meet it again. Unless you really realized that Texas was probably going to fall to Ohio State, which wouldn't have any bearings on the conference. Stupid. Just saying. No, what it was is you weren't counting on Vanderbilt. You weren't counting on Missouri staying ranked as long as they were. You were basically banking on the fact that maybe LSU, maybe South Carolina and Florida were going to be better than as terrible as they are. Which, by the way, half of your teams that beat all 3 of those teams are overinflated, not to mention Tennessee. But I'm going off on a tangent yet again. So, looking at the Alabama-Georgia game, the one thing I looked at in this game, now they've got Bama to win this game by 51%. How, I don't know. Because Georgia's coming off a beatdown of Texas. And a lot of people, maybe Georgia just played this game into the idea that, hey, we're going to put this on the film and not let Alabama see what was up. But I ultimately believe Georgia's a much different team now than they were. And a lot of people don't realize that game was a minute ago. And see, this is where Weinbaum and all these other dummies out there that don't know nothing. To me, Georgia hadn't even figured out what they do well yet. Brad can back me up on this because I kept sitting there saying, when is Georgia's running game going to come to existence? When is it going to flourish like we know it can do? Because really Gunnar Stockton's not on the same level as Carson Beck or any of the other quarterbacks we've seen out of Georgia the last 3 or 4 years. But that's also partially because of the receiving core that they do not have. The type of weapons they're not used to having on that side of the football. And believe it or not, I look at this Georgia team and I see you're not going to see a whole bunch of stars that you're accustomed to seeing. And I was telling Brad that one day when he called. I don't see a whole bunch of stars when I see Georgia. I see a bunch of 9 to 5, bring your work pail. That's what I see. I see a lot of those guys that are going to bring their work pail and they're just going to go to work, from their offensive line to their running backs to their linebackers and defensive linemen. None of these guys to me really stick out, but I say it in a respectful manner. Georgia has finally figured out how to run the football, and Alabama still has not figured out how to stop it yet. They have not. And this is going to be a huge problem for Alabama. And we saw, now I'm not going to say, I will say Oklahoma exposed, as well as Auburn exposed some holes in that Alabama pass blocking. And I think Georgia is not only going to expose it, but they're going to take advantage of it, because needless to say, this hasn't been a Georgia team that has taken the ball away a lot as well. So, when you really start breaking it down, Georgia's defense came alive probably, I would say, about 4 weeks ago, maybe 3, give or take. And I'm not going to use the Texas game as an example, because Texas's offense has been up and down. My buddy Brad continuously says it's because Arch sucks. I'm not going to go there. I don't think it's because he sucks. I just think ultimately Sark has not figured out the combination to this perennial superstar. You got to understand what you have in a certain player, and I still don't think Sark understands what he has in Arch Manning. But we look at Georgia, and what is really always impressed me up until the last couple of seasons is their ability to run the football. But the last 2 or 3 seasons, that has gone away, and we've seen Nate Frazier as well as Chauncey Bowens been able to get out there and really start to make more and more carries. But that's also predicated because Bobo is actually allowing them to run the ball more. 809 yards on the ground for Nate Frazier, 5 touchdowns, and 493 for Bowens for a total of 6. Gunnar Stockton's in on this as well. He's been a very positive addition to the run game. And when I say addition, he's been more and more involved the last couple of weeks. I'm thinking it's basically because Georgia's trying to hold as much in check for the college football playoff. I think they're trying to get away with doing as little as possible on offense, which is strategically fine, but I think ultimately you're going to have to throw the ball some, because needless to say, you want Stockton to get those reps. He needs those reps. He has to have those reps. But on the onset, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of what is Alabama going to be able to do with this Georgia D, because needless to say, you saw this Georgia team figure it out in the second half of their Georgia game, and I'm gonna be honest with you, that had to have you concerned if you were Kalen DeBoer, and you couldn't get this game finished up. It took arguably a late game rally. See, while Simpson's thrown for over 3,000 yards, a staple of Alabama over the last 20 years was always the running game. But just the past 3, you haven't seen Alabama's running game. And I think Jam Miller is questionable for this game, if I recall correctly. And if he's not able to go, you're going to deal with Kevin Riley and Daniel Hill, who barely have 200 yards rushing on the season and barely have 50 carries amongst them. Now, a lot of people say, well, I wouldn't punish Alabama if they can't run the football. Well, here's the reality. They've thrown for 3,300 yards, and then even if you were able to add that means they've barely got 4,500 yards of offense. So all this talk about Ty Simpson and this, that, and the other, that's fine. But you talking about in totality, this Alabama offense only has 4,500 yards in offense.
Stop the cap, bruh.
And this is one of the best teams. Look, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I'm not trying to be there. But then I look at Georgia, and I look at how impressive and how many yards they have, and I look at the North Texas team. Look, their defense ain't really that great either. This is Kalen DeBoer. This ain't Nick Saban, and there's no knock on Kalen DeBoer. You are who you are as a coach. This team's defense has not impressed me. For you to be up on Auburn and then let somebody like that, look, I'm not trying to talk about, look, Auburn should have started Deuce Knight. That's all I'm gonna say. There's no reason if he plays that game, they win. That's all I'm gonna say. But You let an offense like that get open on you. I'm being dead serious. If you look at this game, Alabama's got problems. I see the reason why they're terrified of the fact that if we get blown out, we ain't gonna get in the playoff. You've been running around here playing fraud the whole time. You escaped Athens with the win because, needless to say, Georgia, as always, secondary is not ready for any kind of a challenge in their secondary. They're not. Brad can tell you. I'm not talking about Brad's boys, but the reality of it is, over this season, the defensive backs have gotten more physical. Not saying they got better. I just said physical. And that pass rush, all of a sudden, has shown up. And I think Georgia's defense is showing up at the right time, which in my opinion is what the plan has been the whole time, was for Georgia to say, hey, look, we're going to play Bill Belichick. We're not going to show you our hand for the whole season. We're just going to get enough to win. And maybe in a couple of good games, we'll tip our hat to a couple of things. Outside of that, not going to do that. Because you see a totally different pass rush than you saw in that Texas game than you did in the Alabama game. I don't think Alabama's offensive line is going to be able to block them. I honestly think, this is just me now, Alabama's going to lose this game, and unless Greg Sankey steps in there and tells Kirby to call off the dog so Alabama doesn't get blown out, I see this being a blowout. Because you're not going to sit here and tell me Auburn's defense is better than Georgia's. It's not. I do think that Alabama's going to have problems. And it would not shock me if this game got out of hand and Alabama's out of the college football playoff. I think Georgia's running game, I think this time Georgia tries to run that thing for 300. Because they had over 230 in the first meeting. So it would not shock me if Georgia controls the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And that is going to have Ty Simpson running for his life. And it's going to have Georgia running backs, Nate Frazier. I think Frazier goes over 150. I think they give the steady dose of Nate Frazier in this game. And then I think Bowens is going to come in and he's going to clean up. I wouldn't even put it past Stockton to get a touchdown in this game. And what's impressive is Georgia's ran for over almost 2,300 yards this season. And like I said, Stockton is right there at 25-35 as a team. They've thrown for 2,700 yards. So you're talking about a team that has over almost 5,000 yards of offense. So, yeah, this is not a position the Alabama Crimson Tide want to be in. But I'm taking the Dogs, and I'm taking them to cover. I certainly am. And I think that'll make Brad happy. I take these puppies because I kind of need their assistance, and you know what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure the Dogs don't want no part of us. Ain't that right, Brad? So they might not blow these daggum Tiders out. So they want to keep us out. Or at least attempt to keep us out, if you know what I mean. Now, we arguably got the main course out the way. But then we also got a side order on tap, which is the ACC title game between number 17 Virginia and unranked 7-5 Duke. Now, when I heard they got in, the first thing I said was, ACC, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. But there's two parties that have to be involved, which is why, me even being a Notre Dame fan, most of you know, I don't feel sorry for Miami. A lot of y'all are going to say, well, Miami beat you head-to-head. Here's the reality. You beat us by a field goal in your building.
Damn you!
And if you go back and watch that game, Notre Dame was coming back for that tail. We just ran out of time. And I know what you're going to say, but you still lost. But guess what? You still lost to two unranks. Tell me why you deserve to be in a college football playoff losing to two unranks when my only loss was to arguably an undefeated team for the most part until last week. And we lost by 1 point.
Is that your best?
Exactly. Now, let's move on. Y'all want to say and talk head-to-head? Tell Miami to win their game. Tell them don't lose to Louisville. Tell them don't lose to SMU. Tell them to at least represent the conference that y'all tell us we need to get into. I look at it like this. If you don't represent your conference and you in one, you don't have no kind of say-so between this. All Miami had to do was win out. All they had to do, they didn't even give them one loss. You let a 5-loss Duke team represent your conference. That's unacceptable. Just for that, you shouldn't even get in. You shouldn't even have the right to complain about getting in. And I'm going to do a show about that. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Miami. You sitting there running around here, you got to, we should get in. We beat Notre Dame head-to-head, but you lost to Louisville and SMU. Boo freaking who? Instead, we get the 10-2 Virginia Cavaliers and the 7-5 Duke Blue Devils. See, even if Miami if they get one loss, they still get to host this game and plead their case. You can't even win this conference. This is how bad it is. You got the right to complain and think you're going to get in a back door, and you got a 7-5 team representing your... Let me stop. Brad over here basically said in a nutshell, like I did, he took Virginia, as I am going to take Virginia too. Now, I am going to say that the odds are on the side of Virginia as far as the power rankings go. But I'm going to tell you, if Duke gets hot, this could be a scary game. If Mensa gets hot, listen, this guy's thrown for 3,450 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. I mean, this is not a scrub they dealing with. Excuse me. This ain't a scrub you dealing with. Play with Duke if you want to. They will come out here and they will hurt your feelings. And the ACC will be out. You're welcome, Miami. And I'm looking at this team and I'm saying to myself, since Morris has come back, he is prone to throwing the interception. So I will say this, Duke is one of those teams that they're scary good. And the reason why I say they're scary good, not the way you're thinking. I'm thinking sometimes this team will show up. Like, you look at it, Mensa's played 12 games and he's right at 300 yards a game. When he gets hot, he's a flamethrower. He is an absolute flamethrower. And Barquet is his guy. 63 catches, 978 yards, 6 scores. So you cannot just go out there and say, okay, this is a foregone conclusion. Duke is going to lay an egg. Ain't going to happen. Duke would have never guessed in a million years, hey, we're sitting right here in a situation where we could possibly win this thing. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Sitting right there. Hey, Miami, where you at? Unreal. And you got the nerve to think you get an at-large bid. You can't even get an at-large bid for your own conference.
Bruh.
So I look at it from the standpoint, very scary game for Virginia. I think ultimately Duke does have the defense that's not going with their offense. And then on occasion, Mensa and company tend to get inside the red zone and bog down. So, and this defense of Virginia is deceptively stingy. And I mean, they have some games where it gets out of hand, but they also have a propensity to give the ball away. But you look at Taylor, the running back, he's 3 yards shy of 1,000 yards. He got 14 scores on the year. And then you got Harris, who's got 56 grabs on the year, 5 touchdowns, 809 yards receiving. And I just think this Cinderella season for Virginia, it can't end any better than with an ACC title and possibly a college football playoff berth. So I would think that it would be an opportunity for them to, especially the tragedy that they endured 3 years ago. But I think this game could be quietly one of the better ones of the week. I think they are considered 4-point favorites. I'd say I'd take Virginia in the points. I think Duke has the opportunity to make this a game. I don't see them pulling the upset, but ultimately it's a game where I think Virginia is able to continue to do what it does, and I think they're going to be able to take the ACC championship just and put that tragedy behind them and celebrate. Finally, the game that everybody has been looking forward to. Now, me personally, I have said many a times before, when you're in a conference and, you know, you've got teams such as Ohio State and Indiana, there are going to be a lot of favorites played, and there's going to be a lot of, conference committees together trying to make sure that they keep you, your teams from playing together during the end of the year, and that's justifiable. It's justifiable. They do the best they can to try to keep the best teams from playing each other, so they don't have the issue that is now bestowed upon Alabama right now, which is having to beat Georgia for a second time. Because needless to say, you bring out all the stocks when you play a really good team the first time, and when you get a guy that's as good as, you know, your Kirby Smarts and your Marcus Freemans and your Ryan Days, you know, you don't want to have to give them, you know, second opportunities to get a swipe at you, especially when it really counts. You would rather have that happen, you know, obviously when it counts the most, not just during the regular season and so on and so forth. But we got the matchup we've been waiting on, and needless to say, I'm not sure that Ohio State is ready for what they're about to deal with. I think ultimately Ohio State has been cruising all season. I think they have not been battle tested since that week 1 showdown with Texas, and even then Texas did not look like the same football team that stormed the Texas A&M Aggies, which is why I said, you know, Sark can complain all he wants to. His boys have not been consistent. They've been up and down about as bad as Miami. And unfortunately, when you're up and down like that, it doesn't matter how many brownie points you get for beating the football team. Look, we don't care what you think. You could go out there and to bed, and then you got a team that's sitting here being consistent, and they're home because you decided to show up one Saturday. But you decided not to show up one Saturday during the college football playoff. But let's go ahead and let's take a look at Fernando Mendoza, 2750, 32 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Impressive that I'm looking at a lot of quarterbacks that's got more yardage than he is, but yet he's in the Heisman race. Interesting. And then you got, I think Roman Hemby as well as Kalen Black are two underappreciated guys in this offense. And you could even throw Kobe Martin in there. This offensive line for Indiana is the real deal. You got 3 running backs that are over 400 yards rushing this year, and you've arguably got 2 over 700. And what people don't realize about Indiana, and this is why I don't really see why Mendoza is going to the Heisman, going to New York as a Heisman finalist, is because his numbers don't jump out at you. Now the 230, of course, the 32 touchdowns does jump out at you, but then when you look at this team as a whole, you look at how impressive their running game is. You know, they've got a total of 2,700 yards on the ground. So then you're looking at a team that's got over 5,700 total yards offensively, which is stark contrast to the Alabama Crimson Tide that we talked about earlier. What people don't realize is this running game for Indiana is really a setup for their passing game. Like a lot of your great teams, you look and you say, okay, this is something that you can work with. And then we go over and we look at Ohio State, who is a stark contrast to the running game that Indiana has. Now, they've got 2,058 yards, but they just really established a running game recently. You know, you had C.J. Donaldson, who's got 10 touchdowns on the year. He's really their red zone guy. And then you got Bo Jackson, who has emerged as that dude because it looked like it was James Peoples, it was C.J. Donaldson, possibly Isaiah West, and then Bo Jackson came out of the reins and took over. He's 48 yards short of 1,000 yards, averaging 6.3 a carry. I just think in the long and short, Indiana's defensive front hasn't been challenged since the Oregon game. You could argue Ohio State got challenged a little bit in that Michigan game. I can tell you this. I do think Indiana watched that Michigan tape, and they're going to say, okay, there's a few things that we can do. There's a few things that we're going to have to do. And, of course, it involves the All-American, the freshman, the former freshman sensation, Jeremiah Smith, 72 grabs, 942 yards, and 11 scores. But then the guy who comes up who's got nearly half the catches, but he's equally as effective because you're dealing with Jeremiah Smith, is Carnell Tate. He's the guy you have to be very aware of. 44 grabs, 793 yards, 18 yards a catch. Ask Michigan about Carnell Tate. You snooze on him, you will lose. He's got 8 touchdowns on the year, and you cannot let this guy go. And I think Max Clare, the tight end, is going to be a silent killer in this game for Ohio State. Now, like I said, Julian Sands got over 3,000 yards passing. He's got 30 touchdowns, and this whole talk about his 78.9% completion percentage. Okay, well, yeah, it's semi-impressive. But I look at Fernando Mendoza, and the 32 touchdowns is overly impressive. And now considering he's been sacked 15 times, that's a large number considering a team that has really not been challenged all that much this season. But I think ultimately this game comes down to, number one, neither team has an advantage in home field. That's going to be important. Well, let me phrase that. The game is in Indianapolis, so it all depends on how Buckeye fans travel. And Buckeye fans have a large fan base. So it's not a foregone conclusion that this game is going to go the way of the Buckeyes. I do, however, think that there have been a lot of things that have been held back by Ryan Day this season. I think ultimately when we look at this game, Indiana's been battle tested. Ohio State had been battle tested since week 1. And then you can look back at the Michigan game. Michigan was up in this game. I'm going to say it just this way. If Mendoza stretches the field, and I think he's going to, this is going to be a long day for Julian Sand and this Ohio State defense, because the one thing I look at this Indiana defense, and the one thing that is underrated about this team is their ability to get pressure on the quarterback. I think so many people forget that this team is one of the top teams. They've got 34 sacks on the year, led by Raleigh Hardy and Tyreek Tucker. Hardy has 7 sacks on the year, and Tucker has 5.5. And then Isaiah Jones has 5. And then you got Stephen Daly with 4.5. And not to mention, you got a Indiana defense that, for no more than what they've been doing, this is the team that can take the ball away. Lewis Moore, Amari Farrell, they have 5 and 4 interceptions on this defense. So if Julian Sand's not careful with this ball, now I get it. They're going to make sure Jeremiah Smith doesn't beat them. But I also see this defensive line getting after it. I see these guys getting after it, and they're going to put pressure out there on Julian Sand. Pressure which he has not seen since the Texas game. And this offensive line hasn't seen it. Now, Michigan tried to come with the pressure, but you all know that Michigan tries to get pressure with 4. Did a pretty successful job early on, but I'm going to be honest with you, Indiana's going to bring the heat. Curt Cignetti is not going to let Julian Sand sit back there. He's a freshman, and he's going to make him decide. Which ultimately leads me to my point. I do think Indiana has been tested, and Ohio State hasn't. However, as much as I want to say Ohio State is going to fall, they do have one playmaker in this secondary in Ohio State that I must say is a guy, and he is a dude. And, of course, you guys know I'm talking about Caleb Downs. But you can't just take Caleb Downs here. You got to also look at the pass rush that Ohio State has. They've got Caden Curry, they got Averill Reese, and Kenyatta Jackson. Curry has 9 sacks on the year. Reese has 6.5, and Jackson has 5.5. Now, here's the truth about what we're discussing. Now, but Mendoza has been sacked 15 times. So, Sand's not a foregone conclusion. He's only been sacked 6 times, and he's dropped back 327 times. So, when we look at Indiana's offensive line, you can get to Mendoza. The question is, how is Ohio State going to try to do that? So when you look at Ohio State and Indiana, these two heavyweights going side to side, I think this game's going to come down to which team makes a mistake in the passing game, and by mean, broken assignments. And the last thing is going to be turnovers. Go ahead and listen to Mr. CeeLo when he says this. The team that's going to win this game is going to be the team that doesn't make the big mistake in coverage. And there's going to be a big turnover that changes the course of the game, or it gives another team a score or sets up a score. I think ultimately that's what's going to change this game. And I think the team that is going to do that, my sources point to Ohio State. Sorry, Brad, you picked Indiana. I'm going with Ohio State. And I'm not just going with them because of the favorites or the higher ranks. I think ultimately, you got guys like Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith who have done this before. I think this is going to be, I think Indiana's just missing one thing. I think what happens is Mendoza probably puts the ball on the ground, or he puts the ball in a spot that it's not supposed to. Downs or one of those cornerbacks snags it. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch it. I'm going to be up late watching it. So, yeah. But, guys, let me know what you think about the championship week. Who do you guys think are going to win? Put your choices down below. Make sure you add and subscribe to the show. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show, as well as hit that bell notification so you can keep up with all of the shows as they drop. Also, go to Facebook. Make sure you add us at Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Also, join the group at Gridiron Gab Triple Option. And finally, make sure you go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo so you can keep up with all my in-season and off-season shenanigans during the year. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.